Okay, so we're going to talk about my origin as chief operating officer and kind of, basically what do I do and what is my role here and how did it come about? So one of my favorite books is Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David. I watched the Valuetainment stuff and I read that book, and it made me feel really good because it directly described kind of the experience that I had had. So bottom line is our company has been a rocket ship since I've been here and since even before. I mean, from the genesis, it's just really grown very quickly because it's a great asset class, and Blake, Jennifer, and Wayne are honest, good people, and I feel like it's been kind of infectious. It's just a great family. For those of you who know the Comforts and watch our content, it's not fake. This is not some like sappy plastic thing. That's who they are. They're really great people. And so, yeah, it's grown. It's, like anything else, good word passes among people and things move. Well, we grew really quickly. And for anyone who started, and the reason I reference Your Next 5 Moves, anyone who has been in the base level of a business that goes, exponentially through the roof, they've experienced where you end up wearing a lot of hats. And we were scaling so fast, our ops was not keeping up with the scale, and the amount of hats I was wearing were just so many. And one of the beautiful things that we do here at Comfort Communities, we work really closely with the Tony Robbins organization. We have coaching here. And I had just started the coaching, and she had helped me kind of with some stuff in my personal life out the gate. But bottom line is, pretty quickly she started realizing you're doing way too much. And I just remember I had a joke where I said, I'm touching everything so that I'm not really touching anything, and there's shit on my hands, right? Like I felt like I was just touching, like I would touch something for 5 seconds on a quick phone call. I wouldn't get the full context. Things were happening all around me. And it just felt like I was dropping balls and things were getting a little bit chaotic. And so I think the following year we grew by not very much. We had this huge growth spurt. And so we basically doubled in staff. I made it a big push. Like we wanted more people on the ops side. So we started hiring more managers. We started hiring more support staff. And I started delegating a ton. And I remember she told me, I want you to write down your list of things that you're doing, and I want you to go through, and your full-time job is figuring out how to not have a job at all. Like you want everyone able to do what you're doing, and you're making sure it's being done right. And so it took a long time, and there was like a period of time where people would call me, and I would say, hey, what's going on? They would start telling me, and I'd say, do you have the answer for this? And if the answer was yes, and then they gave me the right answer, I said, good, don't call me with that kind of question again. Or if they should know it, I kind of started asking questions. Instead of just answering and directing people, I just would ask them, hey, is this something I should handle, or is this something accounting should handle? Oh, it's something accounting should handle. Why are you calling me, right? We started having these types of dialogues. And basically I just started, I think it was about 60% of my workload I was able to delegate and then manage through like a weekly meeting kind of thing versus me being so directly involved. At the time, I was getting about 300 emails a day. So obviously incapable of doing it all. And we, had lots of projects everywhere. And I there was a year where I had multiple capital jobs, meaning they were so big that they went into the next level of, local government permitting. We had lots of engineers, contractors managing these jobs with me. They were big dollars, some of them over $1 million, installing 100 homes a year. Basically me directly. I had an assistant who was helping me gather paperwork and stuff, but I was the one checking it, making sure the measurements lined up, making sure the pedestal was ready. And I was borderline having a mental breakdown. I was having panic attacks, couldn't sleep, was being woken up in the middle of the night. I forgot this. It was not a good place to live and be for my mental health. And I think that's my whole reference, is like anyone who has been there when you grow really quickly and don't have the foundational support, man, you feel it. And it's such a raw and visceral experience. But bottom line is I started delegating like a lot of stuff. And I started saying, hey, I would get brought into a meeting. Tide, can you do this? Back in the day, my answer was always yes. And I would do my best and I would get it done. And I had this reputation where it's like, you give it to Tide, it gets done. And I love that reputation. I want that forever. But at the same time, you cannot do that if you're over leveraged, because then you get the opposite, right? It's like you accept everything and then you kind of fall apart. And I was feeling that, I kind of had this like premonition that if I just kept doing everything exactly the way I was doing, I would be fired, because I felt like Blake and Jen at the time would go, what are you doing? So I started delegating everything. And at the time, we're growing fast. And remember, our corporate office is growing too. And so there were people kind of doing the exact same thing as me, grabbing onto things and holding on when they shouldn't have. And I think this was kind of the first part of the COO decision. Blake saw that. He saw Tide's willing to let go of responsibilities to do things the right way. And I think that was something he appreciated. He kind of had made some comments. The other thing was, back in the day, ops financials for the properties was not directly tied in with operations. We really didn't get a lot of insight into the financials. Our job was to make sure projects were done and we were managing occupancy and rent collection. Well, I started kind of being brought into more and more meetings and understanding the status of bank accounts. And also from the acquisition side, I would be kind of, oh yeah, we just put an earnest money deposit on this deal. Oh, we just put an earnest money deposit on this deal. Oh, this account has this much money. And I started doing the math in my head without really having it. And there was a day where I basically was told that the company had a certain amount of money for, a transaction that was happening, and I knew it didn't. I knew that an earnest money deposit had gone out and it was short, it was light. And I caught it and I brought it up. I said, hey, you guys don't have it. And a couple of days later, I get brought into a kind of a closed door meeting, and Blake looked at me and said, hey, I want you to take over fully. At the time, my title was head of operations. All I was doing was installs, occupancy, collections, team managing. And he goes, I want you to take over the financials. I want you to be the owner of if the properties are doing well, if they're performing, and I want you to be the chief operating officer. Well, when you get asked to be a chief operating officer or any C-suite, and you're not currently, the answer immediately is yes. But in the moment, in the room, I didn't know what it was. And in later conversations with Blake, he didn't either. He just said, hey, I want you to be chief operating officer. It's going to come with a big salary bump, and it's going to come with a big responsibility bump for you. And so I ordered some books on chief operating officers, and I read them. And this is kind of the origin, basically, of what I'm doing currently. And I read these books, I took it in, I made notes, and I really just started requesting things, listening. I wasn't actually making a lot of changes out the gate. Probably the first 6 months, I really didn't do much different. I just was getting more granular details and kind of writing out my plan. And I remember it was in July, I think, that I got the promotion. And so in November, December, I put forth, I think it was 36 items that I wanted to achieve the following year, and chatted through it with Blake and Jen. And so that's kind of my kickoff into what I'm doing now. And basically, some of the first things that I did right out the gate was I ended that wall of communication breakdown between acquisitions and operations. I made sure that our accounting team had the performance, was involved in the conversations. Back in the day, our accounting team got deals on day of close. Now it's right out the gate from the beginning. They're in constant communication. Also, we were doing our rent increases based off of what we thought was market, not necessarily off of what the business plan was. And so what happened through COVID is rents, obviously nationwide, it's a very common topic, went up. However, expenses went up too. And so if we were just going, hey, we're going to do a 5% indefinitely, but we weren't tracking that the expense growth had been exponential, what would happen is, they weren't cash producing the way that they were supposed to do off of our performance and our sales projections. So we started kind of backtracking and kind of changing our future model. Well, if we were supposed to infill 20 houses, for this market, and rents were supposed to go up 5%, maybe rents went up 7% and we did 30 houses, right? We started kind of changing the business model to catch up with what we had originally forecasted. And we started making decisions. Some properties weren't doing great, so we turned off GP distributions, things like that. And so at the time, this is kind of the origin too of Comfort Capital, where the management company and the acquisition company at the time were one piece. And so we had a lot of numbers that were basically tying in together that didn't make sense. It's like, did the management company have a investor event at the Padres Stadium that cost this much? No. Are they doing these investor dinners? No. So that's kind of where we started separating, so we could see what's the cost of the syndication, what's the cost of the day-to-day property management. And so, this is just kind of touching some of the things as a chief operating officer I do. But really, if I had to encapsulate what is a chief operating officer, it doesn't matter what company it is. I am the consigliere to ownership, right? I'm the guy who takes the input of the vision of Blake and Jennifer and what they want to achieve on the day-to-day operation side, and also what we've promised to our investors and financial fiduciary responsibilities. And I effectuate that plan with my team. That is what I do. Every day, I'm in different departments. I don't have a direct job. I'm not doing a direct thing. I'm looking at what are you guys doing and making sure it's in concert with what Blake and Jennifer have indicated is their goal as a company and as fiduciaries for our investors. So that is my job, making sure that things happen. I also handle things when they go bump in the night. We have lots of properties. Not everything's running perfectly every moment. Sometimes infrastructure fails. Sometimes things do not meet what they're supposed to do. And so how do we get in the mix? How do we make sure things happen? How do I prep things? All that kind of stuff. So the direction of the company, training, staff, culture, projects, financials. It really is an all-encompassing job that kind of touches every facet of the business, and I love it. It's so fun. It's so different. I used to be jealous of, I call it the Reese's Pieces department, the acquisitions wing, where it's like they're chasing deals. It is glitzy, it is glamorous, but at the end of the day, for those of you who have bought deals, let's say you had a big exit, now you're entering our space, whether that's multifamily, you're a landlord, you've got the asset, you realize really quickly that managing the business, managing the property so that it is a producer and does what it's supposed to do, it's a whole nother animal, and you need both, right? You could be very successful at raising capital and acquiring deals through acquisitions, but then have poor ops. And we run into operators like that all the time, groups all the time using third-party management, and their parks look terrible. Their apartment complex isn't run right. They've got bad tenants. You see this in your local neighborhoods. If you live in California, people are putting ADUs in, and now they have riffraff. It's like, it's hard to manage real estate, and that is what I've been doing for the last 11 years. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Cool. So on that, you kind of expand, if you want to, on the difference between managing mobile home parks and mobile home communities versus any other asset class.
Okay.
If there's any differences in that, if you want to touch on that, maybe.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah. We manage mobile home parks. That is our specialty. We do have one apartment complex, and I personally have some single-family residential, and obviously a lot of our investors do. So we kind of cover that and talk about that and understand it. When I first got into the business, the general concept and opinion of mobile home parks was that they were super easy, and it used to be all these articles and like MHI or MH Insider, different things, different publications that said, 8 reasons why owning a mobile home park is the easiest way to make money, or things like along those lines. And now it's the opposite. You see 8 reasons why it's hard. I think with multifamily, I'm not going to get into the asset status currently and how it is from an investment vehicle. You can tune into Comfort Capital and Ben Schuster on a lot of that content. But what I will say from a management premise, the beauty of apartment complexes is usually they have higher revenue, right? So that's going to it's going to touch a little bit on the expense ratio. But when you have so much more revenue, for example, in almost every scenario, minimum, it's double what we make on the mobile home park side. It allows for a lot more staff. And what comes with that is a lot of problems go away. And to give you an example, we have a 204 unit apartment complex here in San Marcos, and that property employs 9 people. And so it has a bookkeeper, it has 4 maintenance staff, it has somebody throwing parties all the time. I mean, there's so much revenue for them to do a lot, but it's only 200 units. I have a lot of, we have communities that are close to 200 units where, before us, it had one park manager, right? Now we use teams, and that'll be probably its own episode. The way we structure our management styles very different than a lot of people. But ultimately, it's 3 to 4 people that are managing 4 to 5 communities usually. And that's what makes sense financially. And so I would say that that is one of the things that makes apartment complexes a little bit easier to manage. Also, I feel like a lot of apartment complexes in general are just newer, right? Most mobile home parks were built in the 70s. I think our oldest mobile home park we've ever had was built in the 40s. So you end up having antiquated electrical, antiquated gas, plumbing, streets. There's just a lot of upkeep on the park itself that is different. Now, I think that there's a lot of beauty from an investment vehicle standpoint in MH. I'm not trying to make it sound like MH is bad or worse than apartments. It has a financial growth rate that's better, right? These are better deals to buy currently, but that is kind of one of the things that people don't really understand. I've met a lot of guys that come from multi and they think that they're going to go into MH and it's going to be like a walk in the park, but they don't understand the fundamentals. The other thing is the homes. If you have an apartment complex, you're really just doing kind of touch and go. You're going in, paint, repair, flooring repair, stuff like that. But some of these mobile homes, we have to, redo the electrical and plumbing throughout the house. A lot of contractors don't want to work on mobile homes. And so it's a whole another gambit. And so with turnover, you get these houses. Who's managing the asset? Who's managing the specific home's title? How do we verify ownership? You have to have special licensing to sell them. What about vacant pads? You have to install houses. Installing houses, you need to be a licensed dealer. You need to coordinate the permitting process with the different people that install them. There's a lot of work that comes with them. And so this is like a whole nother thing. So I feel like you have to be a Swiss Army knife in manufactured housing, where in apartment complexes, there's lots of people who can flip. You can hire a maintenance guy and he can turn your units for you. Your maintenance guy can't install a house, right? That's a whole nother animal. Your maintenance guy can't completely renovate, in most cases, a house from top to bottom. And what are you doing when you have them on scale? Right now we have 280 houses. In order for us, my crew's flipping 18 houses a month right now. Like, that's something that most apartment complex operators are not in a position to do, don't have the bandwidth to do. So these are just some of the subtleties. I think obviously the easiest is single family residential. You've got one renter, you put them on a year lease. If the home's been turned, maybe they're there for a few years, or for, you have one turnover a year. I think that from a management standpoint, SFR is pretty easy. Apartment complexes, they have a higher turn rate, but there's a lot more consumers directly looking for it. So that's where these are some of the things that I think make manufactured housing more difficult. And if you're from Wall Street and you just decided to syndicate because you're looking at how the numbers are going through the roof in MH, pretty quickly the fastest horses get separated from the rest of the pack. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the differences.